"You kissed me while I was out cold?" the rancher asked. Apache girl reply, "I saved your life, sir." The sun was high in the sky, beating down on the wide open land where the rancher worked every day. His name was Jake, a strong and quiet man who knew the land like the back of his hand. He loved the ranch and the animals, especially his horses. The ranch was a large place with fields stretching as far as the eyes could see. It was peaceful, but working alone on such a big land could sometimes be dangerous. That morning, Jake woke early as usual. He planned to fix a broken fence near the edge of the property. The fence was important because it kept the horses safe and stopped wild animals from coming in. Jake loaded his tools into his old pickup truck and drove slowly to the spot. He liked the quiet of the morning, the sound of birds, and the soft wind moving through the trees. It gave him a feeling of calm and freedom. When he reached the fence, he parked the truck and got out. The sun was warm, and he wiped the sweat from his forehead. The fence was old and some parts were loose. Jake was good at fixing things, but this fence was tricky because the ground was rocky and uneven. He took out his hammer and nails, ready to start working. Jake climbed over the fence to get a better angle. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted. He lost his balance and slipped. His foot hit a loose rock, and before he could grab anything, he fell hard. He hit his head on a big stone, and everything went dark. He lay there for a long time, unconscious, unable to move. The sun kept moving across the sky, and the ranch was quiet except for the soft sound of the wind. No one was around to hear him or help. If no one found him soon, things could get very bad. Nearby, not far from the ranch, lived a young Apache girl named Ayana. She was about 17 and had lived all her life close to the land, just like Jake. Ayana was known in her community for her knowledge of the plants and herbs that grew in the wild. Her grandmother had taught her how to use these plants for healing, just as their ancestors had done for many years. That day, Ayana was walking through the woods, collecting herbs to help with the sick neighbor's cough. She moved carefully and quietly, her eyes sharp for the right plants. Suddenly she noticed something unusual. Footprints leading off the main trail toward the rocky part of the ranch. They were big prints, like a man's boots. Curious and a little worried, Ayana decided to follow the footprints. As she walked closer, she saw a shadow lying still on the ground. Grasp. She hurried to the spot and found Jake lying motionless, his face pale and his body still. She knew right away that he was hurt badly. Without hesitation, Ayana knelt beside him and checked his breathing. It was slow, but steady. She touched his forehead and felt it was warm. She looked around for anything that might help and saw a small water bottle in Jake's truck nearby. Carefully, she poured a little water on his lips to keep him from drying out. Ayana stayed calm. She remembered the stories her grandmother told her about people who were hurt in the wild. Sometimes a kiss on the lips was used to help bring someone back to life, to give them a spark of breath if they had stopped breathing. It sounded strange, but it was a tradition that had saved lives before. She leaned down and gently kissed Jake on the lips. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his chest moved slightly, and he took a small breath. Encouraged, Ayana continued to stay with him, watching carefully. She knew she had to get help soon, but for now her presence was the only thing between life and death. Grasp. Time passed slowly. The sun moved lower in the sky, and the air began to cool. Ayana used her jacket to cover Jake and tried to keep him comfortable. She talked softly to him, telling him stories of her people and the land, hoping her voice would keep him connected to the world. After a while, Jake's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused and weak. When he saw Ayana, he blinked in surprise. The first thing he said was, "You kissed me while I was out cold?" His voice was rough but full of shock. Ayanna smiled gently and said, "I saved your life, sir. You needed help, and I was here." Jake tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. Ayanna helped him lean against a nearby rock, supporting him as best she could. She could see the pain in his eyes, but also something like gratitude. Jake asked how she had found him, and she explained the footprints and her knowledge of the land. He listened carefully, realizing that without her, he might never have woken up. The sun was setting now, and the ranch was beginning to feel colder. Ayanna knew she had to make a decision. The nearest town was far, and she didn't have a way to call for help. But she also knew she couldn't leave Jake alone. So, she decided to carry him slowly back toward her home, a small cabin on the edge of the woods. The journey was difficult. Jake was heavy and still weak, and the path was rough. But Ayanna was strong and determined. She moved carefully, resting when she needed to but never stopping. Her connection to the land gave her strength, and her heart told her she had to keep going. Along the way, she pointed out plants and herbs that could heal cuts or reduce pain. She explained how the earth could be a friend to those who respected it. Jake listened with interest, amazed by her knowledge and calm confidence. When they finally reached her home, Ayanna's grandmother was waiting. She was an older woman with kind eyes and a deep voice that seemed to carry the wisdom of many years. Together they cleaned Jake's wounds, wrapped him in warm blankets, and prepared a simple meal. That night, as Jake rested, Ayanna stayed by his side. She watched over him, ready to help if he needed anything. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with a new understanding. Jake began to realize that this young Apache girl was more than just a rescuer. She was a bridge between two worlds. His world of ranches, horses, and open skies, and her world of tradition, nature, and deep respect for the land. Though Jake did not know what the future would hold, he felt a strange hope. He had been saved by a stranger, kissed while out cold, and carried through the wilderness. But most of all, he had found a new friend in Ayanna, whose quiet strength had given him a second chance. The night outside grew darker, but inside the small cabin there was warmth. Two lives, once separate, had now crossed paths in a way that neither would forget. Jake slowly opened his eyes again, feeling the warmth of the small cabin around him. The soft light of a lantern flickered gently nearby. His body ached, and his head still felt heavy and dizzy. For a moment, he was unsure where he was or how he had gotten there. Then he remembered the fall, the pain, and the darkness that followed. As his eyes adjusted, Jake saw a young girl sitting quietly beside him. But it was Ayanna, the Apache girl who had found him. She smiled softly, but there was a serious look in her eyes, a mix of relief and concern. She had been watching over him all night, making sure he was safe. Jake tried to sit up, but his muscles protested. He groaned quietly and leaned back against the pillows Ayanna had arranged for him. His mind was full of questions. The first thing he said without thinking much was about the kiss. "You kissed me while I was out cold?" His voice was rough and filled with surprise. "Why did you do that?" Ayanna looked down for a moment, then met his gaze steadily. "I saved your life, sir," she said simply. "Sometimes, when someone is unconscious and their breathing is weak, we use a special kiss to help bring them back. It is a way to give hope and help."
Jake blinked, trying to understand.
He had never heard of such a thing before. But looking at Ayanna's calm face, he realized she was serious. This kiss was not just a random act. It was something important in her culture, something meant to save him. I don't remember much, Jake admitted. Just the fall, then.
Nothing.
That's normal, Ayana said kindly. Psst. Your body was resting and healing. But you are strong. Psst. You will get better. The two sat quietly for a moment. The silence was not uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like a bridge between them, a way to connect two very different lives. Jake, the rancher who had spent years working alone, and Ayana, a young girl raised with ancient knowledge and deep respect for the earth.
Where exactly am I? Jake finally asked.
You are at my home, Ayana replied. I live nearby with my grandmother. We help people using the old ways, plants, herbs, and care. Jake looked around, desk. The cabin was simple but cozy. Wooden walls, soft blankets, and the smell of herbs filled the air. It was very different from his ranch, but there was something comforting about it. Over the next few days, Ayana helped Jake recover. She brought him water and food, made sure he took rest, and gently cleaned his wounds. Every day she told him stories about her people, the Apache, and their connection to the land. Jake listened with growing interest. He was amazed by how much she knew about healing plants, and how her grandmother had taught her to use nature's gifts. It was a world he had never known before, but it felt honest and powerful. At first, Jake was careful not to ask too many questions. He was not used to relying on others, especially a young girl. But Ayana's kindness and quiet strength slowly broke down his walls. One afternoon, as Jake sat outside the cabin feeling stronger, Ayana showed him some of the plants around them. She pointed to leaves and flowers, explaining what they could do.
This one helps with pain, she said, touching a green leaf, and this one can stop bleeding. She picked a small bundle of herbs and handed it to Jake.
If you want, I can teach you how to use them. Jake smiled, surprised by the offer. I'd like that, he said. For the first time in a long while, Jake felt a connection, not just to the land, but to another person, someone who understood the value of the earth and the life it gave. He realized that Ayana was more than just a rescuer. She was a teacher, a friend. As the days passed, their conversations grew deeper. They talked about their families, their hopes, and the challenges they faced. Jake shared stories about the ranch, the hard work, and the loneliness of living far from others. Ayana spoke about her tribe, the importance of tradition, and the wisdom passed down from her grandmother. Sometimes they would sit in silence, watching the sun set behind the hills. The colors in the sky reminded them both of home, in different ways. But not everything was easy. Jake could feel the weight of what others might think if they knew about his growing bond with Ayana. In the town nearby, people were slow to accept those who were different. The idea of a rancher and an Apache girl becoming close was something many would not understand. Ayana felt this too. Yes, she had grown up hearing stories of mistrust and fear between her people and others. Sometimes it made her wonder if she would ever be truly accepted beyond the borders of her community. One evening, as they prepared a simple meal together, Jake looked at Ayana and said quietly, "Do you think this can work? Us
Being friends?
Ayana smiled, her eyes shining with hope. I believe it can, but we must be patient and strong. The land teaches us that. Their friendship became a quiet promise, an understanding that they would support each other, no matter what came next. The rancher, who once thought he needed no one, was learning to trust. The Apache girl, who had always been cautious, was opening her heart. Together, they were beginning a story of healing. Not just for Jake's body, but for two worlds that had long been apart. One day Jake asked if he could visit the ranch again. He wanted to see his horses and the fences that still needed fixing. Ayanna agreed, offering to come with him if he wanted. The idea of returning to his old life felt strange but exciting. He knew it would be a challenge, but he was ready to face it, with Ayanna by his side. The morning they left the cabin, the air was cool and fresh. Jake looked at the girl who had saved him, feeling a deep gratitude he could not fully explain. "Thank you," he said simply. Ayanna nodded. "You saved me, too, by trusting me." As they walked toward the ranch, the future felt uncertain but full of possibility. Two different lives, brought together by chance and courage, were now linked by a bond that could not be broken. The story was just beginning, and both Jake and Ayanna knew that many challenges lay ahead, but they were ready to face them, together. The morning sun rose gently over the ranch as Jake and Ayanna walked back onto the land that Jake had called home for many years. The smell of fresh grass and the soft sounds of animals waking filled the air. For Jake, this place was familiar and comforting, but it also felt different now, like a place waiting to be rediscovered. Ayanna looked around with wide eyes. She had seen the ranch from a distance before, but being here up close was something new. The wide open fields, the horses running free, and the old wooden fences all told stories of hard work and care. She could feel the spirit of the land and understood why Jake loved it so much. Jake felt a mix of happiness and nervousness. He was glad to be home but worried about how others might react to Ayanna's presence. People in the nearby town were not always kind to those who were different, especially to someone like Ayanna, who came from a native background. He knew that their friendship might raise questions or even cause problems. But for now, Jake pushed those worries aside. He wanted to focus on the work that needed to be done and the chance to share his world with Ayanna. The first task was to check on the horses. Jake walked toward the stable, with Ayanna close behind. The horses recognized him and nickered softly, happy to see their owner again. Ayanna reached out her hand slowly to one of the horses and, to Jake's surprise, it gently nuzzled her fingers. It was clear that animals could sense kindness, no matter where someone came from. As they worked together to feed and care for the horses, Jake began to teach Ayanna some of the skills needed to manage the ranch. He showed her how to mend the fences, saddle the horses, and recognize signs that an animal might be sick or hurt. Ayanna listened carefully, eager to learn. In return, Ayanna shared her own knowledge with Jake. She taught him about the plants and herbs growing wild around the ranch. She showed him how to find leaves that could heal wounds, and roots that could help ease pain. Jake was amazed by how much the land had to offer if one knew where to look. Their days became filled with hard work and learning. They rose early, worked through the sunlit hours, and rested as the stars came out. Each day their friendship grew stronger, built on respect and a shared love for the land. But even as they worked side by side, Jake could sense the quiet judgment of the people in the nearby town. Word had begun to spread about the Apache girl who was spending time with the rancher. Some people whispered behind their backs, while others stared openly when they saw Ayanna walking through town. Steak. Jake felt torn. He wanted to protect Ayanna from the harsh words and cold looks, but he also knew he could not hide the truth. He believed in standing up for what was right, even if it meant facing criticism. One afternoon, as Jake and Ayanna sat by a small creek near the ranch, Jake spoke about his fears. Breaks people might not understand us, he said quietly. They might try to come between us because of where you come from. Ayanna looked at him, her eyes steady and strong. I have faced this before, she said. But I will not let fear stop me. My people have lived on this land for many years. We know its secrets, and we know its strength. Her words gave Jake courage. He realized that Ayanna's strength was not just in her knowledge, but in her spirit.
She was brave and proud of who she was, and that made him respect her even more. Together, they decided to face the challenges head-on.
Jake would stand by Ayanna and they would show others that their friendship was built on trust, respect, and a shared love for the land. As the days passed, Jake invited Ayanna to meet some of his closest friends and family. At first, they were unsure about her. Some looked at her with suspicion, while others avoided eye contact. But Ayanna remained calm and respectful, sharing stories about her culture and the healing traditions of her people. Slowly, the walls of misunderstanding began to break down. People started to see Ayanna not just as someone different, but as a person with kindness, wisdom, and strength. They noticed how well she worked with Jake, how she cared for the animals, and how she respected the land. One evening, at a small gathering near the ranch, Jake stood in front of the crowd and spoke openly about Ayanna. He told them how she had saved his life, how she had cared for him, and how she had taught him things he never knew. His words were honest and full of respect. The crowd listened quietly. Some faces softened, and some nodded in understanding. It was a small but important step toward acceptance. Ayanna felt a mix of relief and hope. She knew the road ahead would still have difficulties, but she also knew they were not alone. With Jake by her side and a growing group of supporters, she believed they could build a future where people of different backgrounds could live together in peace. Their partnership was no longer just about healing a hurt body. It was about healing old wounds between two cultures. They were creating a new story, one of friendship, respect, and courage. Jake and Ayanna continued to work on the ranch, side by side, learning from each other and growing stronger together. Their bond was a quiet reminder that sometimes the strongest connections come from the most unexpected places. As the sun set each day over the wide-open fields, Jake and Ayanna knew they had found something rare and precious, a friendship that could change not only their lives but also the lives of those around them. And so, with hope in their hearts and determination in their steps, they faced the future together, ready to face whatever challenges came their way. As Jake and Ayanna's friendship grew stronger, the people in the nearby town started to notice. Some were curious, but many were not happy. The old ways of thinking still held strong in the small community. There were many who believed that the rancher should only be close to people like himself, people from his own background. They whispered behind closed doors and watched with suspicion when Jake and Ayanna were seen together. One afternoon, Jake went into town to buy supplies. He noticed the cold stares and hushed conversations. Some shopkeepers acted polite but distant. Others openly questioned his choices. Jake's heart grew heavy. He had hoped that his friendship with Ayanna would be accepted, but it was clear that many were not ready. Word soon spread, and the whispers turned into open talk. People began to question Jake's loyalty to his own community. They wondered why he spent so much time with an Apache girl. Some even accused him of forgetting where he came from. Ayanna heard about the gossip too. She tried not to let it bother her, but the weight of their judgment was hard to ignore. She had grown up hearing stories of mistrust between her people and others. Now, those old wounds seemed to open again. Desperation. One evening, as Jake and Ayanna sat by the fire, she spoke softly. "Do you think they will ever understand us?" she asked. Jake looked into the flames and sighed. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. We can't let their fear stop us. We have to be brave." The next day brought a challenge neither of them expected. A group of men from the town came to the ranch. Their faces were stern, and their voices were firm. They wanted to speak with Jake.
Jake met them calmly.
They accused him of betraying his community and warned him to stop spending time with Ayanna.
They said it would bring trouble to the ranch and to him. Jake listened carefully. Then he spoke with quiet strength. Ayanna saved my life, he said. She helped me when no one else could. I will not turn my back on her. The men were taken aback by Jake's words. Some were angry, but others seemed to think about what he had said. Still, the tension was clear. Ayanna stood beside Jake, feeling the weight of their eyes on her. She knew this moment was important. It was more than just about her and Jake. It was about the chance for understanding and respect. Later that week, a meeting was held in the town's small hall. Many people came, some with angry faces, others with curious eyes. Jake stood before them, with Ayanna by his side. He told the story of the accident, the fall, the rescue, and how Ayanna had saved his life. He spoke about her knowledge of healing and the strength she showed. He shared how much he had learned from her and how their friendship had changed him. Ayanna also spoke. She talked about her people's connection to the land, their traditions, and the importance of respect and kindness. Her voice was steady and clear, reaching the hearts of many in the room. Not everyone was convinced, but the meeting opened a door. People began to see that their fears were based on misunderstanding. Slowly, the walls of prejudice started to crumble. Some townspeople came to visit the ranch afterward, curious to meet Ayanna and learn more about her. They saw her kindness, her knowledge, and the way she cared for the land and animals. Many were surprised to find they had been wrong to judge her. Jake and Ayanna worked hard to build bridges between their communities. They organized gatherings where stories were shared, traditions were explained, and friendships were formed. It was not always easy, but each small step was a victory. Through these efforts, Jake and Ayanna showed that courage and honesty could overcome fear and hate. They proved that people from different backgrounds could come together and find common ground. The ranch became a place of hope, a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over judgment. Despite the challenges, Jake and Ayanna's bond remained unshaken. They continued to support each other, facing the future with determination and hope. Their story was no longer just about a rescue or a friendship. It was about breaking barriers and creating a new path for others to follow. As the seasons changed, so did the town. The people learned to see beyond their differences and appreciate the strength that comes from unity. Jake and Ayanna stood together, proud of what they had built and ready for whatever lay ahead. Their journey was far from over, but they knew they would face it together, with hearts full of courage and hands joined in friendship. As time passed, the changes in the town became more visible. The whispers and cold looks were slowly replaced by friendly greetings and curious smiles. People who had once been suspicious now came to the ranch to learn more about Ayanna and the traditions she shared. The walls that had once divided the community were beginning to come down, one small step at a time. Jake and Ayanna worked tirelessly to build bridges between their worlds. They organized small gatherings at the ranch where people from the town and the Apache community could come together. At these gatherings, stories were told. Stories of the land, of history, of struggles, and of hope. Ayanna shared her knowledge of healing plants and ancient traditions, while Jake spoke about ranch life and the importance of caring for the earth. These events were more than just meetings. They became celebrations of culture and friendship. Children from both communities played together, laughing and learning from one another. Elders exchanged stories, finding common ground in their experiences and dreams for the future. Through these efforts, Jake and Ayanna showed everyone that differences could be a source of strength rather than division. They helped the town see that respect and understanding
were the keys to harmony. Breaths. Slowly but surely the community began to change. At the ranch, life flourished. The horses were healthy and happy, and the land was cared for with love and attention. Jake and Ayana worked side by side, their partnership growing stronger every day. They shared the hard work of the ranch, but also the quiet moments, watching sunsets, listening to the sounds of nature, and dreaming about what was possible. One evening, as they sat by the fire outside the cabin, Jake looked at Ayana with a smile. "I never thought my life would change this much," he said softly. "You've taught me so much, not just about healing or the land, but about courage and kindness." Ayana smiled back. "And you've shown me that friendship can break through any wall. Together, we are stronger." Desperate. Their bond had become something rare and beautiful. It was not just about the past or the traditions they came from. It was about building a future where everyone could belong. As the years went by, Jake and Ayana's story became a symbol of hope in the region. People talked about the rancher and the Apache girl who had faced fear and prejudice and come out stronger. Their courage inspired others to look beyond differences and embrace what made each person unique. The town's children learned about the land and its history in new ways, respecting the old stories and making new ones of their own. Families came together to celebrate the rich culture that had once been divided. Jake and Ayana continued to work hard, but they also made time to enjoy life. They rode horses across the fields, planted new trees, and watched the stars fill the night sky. They laughed together, shared their dreams, and supported each other through every challenge. Their friendship was a reminder that kindness and respect could change the world, one heart at a time. One day, as they stood looking over the ranch, Jake took Ayana's hand. "Whatever comes next," he said, "I want to face it with you." Ayana nodded, her eyes shining with hope. Together. And so, their story, which had begun with a kiss that saved a life, became a journey of healing, courage, and unity. They showed that even in the hardest times, people could come together to create something new and beautiful. The ranch, the land, and the community were forever changed by their friendship. It was a story that would be told for generations, a story of trust, bravery, and the power of love. As the sun set behind the hills, Jake and Ayana stood side by side, ready to face the future with open hearts. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, but they also knew that together they could overcome anything. And so, under the wide, open sky, their journey continued, stronger, kinder, and full of hope.